Welcome to the first episode of 2024 of the Freemium podcast. I'm Curtis Killen. We got Brady Jones in the house today.
What's going on, man?
How are you, bro?
Good, dude. Hey, happy to be here.
I'm happy you came.
Thank
and we were just talking earlier. I think this is going to be the easiest podcast I've ever had because already, you seem to be very extroverted. You like to talk to people. It's going to be easy.
This is what I do, man. This is what I do. Is talk in front of a microphone. And I got to say, on the way here, we're in Montreal now, obviously, and coming in from Ottawa. I listened to one of your episodes with the underwear guy. The what was it?
Man-made.
Man-made.
Yeah.
And funny enough, I'm wearing man-made underwear right now.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and
Shout out to Man-made.
It was super. It flowed really well. It was super informative. I loved it, man.
Yeah.
It was really good.
Thank you. I appreciate that. He's actually coming back on with. Do you know Matthew Jufrida?
Yeah, absolutely.
So he's
the comedian who does a lot of his marketing stuff, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
So
Sweet.
it's a really cool story what they have. They're coming on the 16th, January 16th.
Awesome. Very cool.
And yeah, so we got to bang out a bunch of episodes because Shmar is going to Thailand, right? He's going to Thailand for the month of February.
Love
so
that.
we got to get some content out.
Sure. Yeah.
But here, let's get started, man. So you're a West Island boy.
Yeah, West Island. Grew up in Kirkland. Went to BHS, John Abbott, and Concordia. The classic.
That's what I did.
Actually, yeah.
I didn't go to BHS, but
sure.
I went to John Abbott, then went to Concordia.
Exactly. Yeah. It's the same run as 90% of West Island kids, and studied the whole way. Communication stuff, so media arts at Abbott. Communication and cultural studies at Concordia, and then all the while though I was actually in radio. So I started in radio when I was 15 years old at a radio station called 94.7 Hits FM, which is now no longer exists. They sold a couple years ago, but I started when I was super young as like a street team kid putting up banners, and I would host the odd event, and then I started hosting more and more and more, and eventually started working part-time and then full-time and then on air. And
so did you know from a young age that you wanted to be a radio host or somehow involved in radio?
I knew from a young age I wanted attention. And I had no discernible talents otherwise, right? Okay. So I remember my sisters would have like ballet recitals, and they'd be up on stage, and obviously everybody's staring and filming and stuff like that, and I was just a little kid, and I'd have to go on stage after everything was done. I'd cry all the way home if I didn't get up on stage, so I could, I don't know, stand up there, just my parents could look at me. Like I just wanted to also be up on stage and to perform, I guess. And wasn't really talented in a whole lot of other things. I would do the.
You seem pretty talented right now.
Yeah, it's just talking. That's the easy part, right? But I talent shows in high school and stuff. I would always host those. I started hosting those when I was like 13. I would do it every year. And again, because all my friends had more talent than I did, but I wanted to be involved. I wanted to be included, and sort of just felt comfortable in that role, and was able to fortunately leverage it into a career.
Cool. What was it like being a 15-year intern at 94.7? Or just in general? Because I'm always curious what it's like being like a teenage intern at a office or at like a company because you're 15 years old. So
I was a kid.
Obviously, I would assume no one really takes you seriously.
No.
But at the same time, they're probably looking at you going, hey, kid, good for you. You're 15 years old and you're in here. Like, good job. You're going to have a bright future. Like, what was it like?
Like I wasn't on air at the time, right? So it was a position built for people around that age and a little bit older. The way that they worked their street team program. So every radio station pretty much has a street team. And that's sort of like your lowest level, like your entry level position within a radio station. Ours at our current, the
it's
station
a street
I'm
team.
at now.
Sorry, I'm just going to stop right there.
Yeah.
Is a street team like people that drive around and kind of promote the radio station?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's their promotions department, right?
Okay.
It's very entry level. You're going to events, you're setting things up, you're meeting people, but it really is like the face of your radio station, right? Like you really want to have these people well trained and well versed on how to interact with people, how to set things up, make it look good. So it was built for that age group, and how we worked it there was it was all unpaid. So it was an internship. It was structured as a way to get your foot in the door, and you were only required to do like 1 or 2 events a month, which is great if you're also a student, or there was even people in like their mid-20s or late 20s or even early 30s who just wanted to do it because it's fun. Like you get to go to a lot of events, get to meet cool people, and so I was doing it because I really wanted to get into the industry, and it was cool. There's people my age, but I think from early on, I think I made it pretty clear my intentions were to continue to grow within the industry, and fortunately they were able to give me some space to grow. My entire career, I've never applied for a job. They've always created a job for me.
Nice.
Which is pretty
That's always
sweet.
nice.
Yeah, which is
So you must be doing something, right?
I hope so. I think so. It's like.
Was there anything in between? So you worked at 94.7. Now you're at 89.9.
Yep, exactly.
Was there anything in between that path between 94.7
Nope.
and
So I worked
89.9?
at Hits FM 94.7 for 8 years. And now I'm just began my 9th year at HOT, HOT 89.9 in Ottawa.
Was 94.7 also owned by Stingray?
No, so Hits FM is actually very interesting. It's what we call a border station. So it actually broadcasts, like the main studio was in Malone, New York. So it's over the border.
Yes.
So it's actually governed by the FCC and not the CRTC. So it's American, not Canadian.
Okay.
So what that means is you don't have to play a certain amount of Canadian content. It means your ads can be in French and English. You have a lot of advantages being a border station. What it also means is your signal shit. And, there's also a lot of disadvantages with that as well. So we were always a budget station. There wasn't a lot of leadership. Everybody was on the on-air side was broadcasting from all over the place. It was what we call voice-tracked radio, which means that it's really never live. The people there we had our drive guy was from Cleveland, and he'd record his show the day in advance for whatever it was, $25 a day or whatever, because it would take him 10 minutes to do. So everything was very much budget radio. But it was a great learning experience for me because I got to experience every single different department. I would talk every day with the salespeople, had a great relationship with them. I was in promotions. I was also on air. I was doing a bunch of things. So it was a great way for me to experience every part of a radio station until I was ready to, put my big boy pants on and go to a bigger one.
What is, okay, like I don't really know anything about radio.
No problem. Ask anything.
What's it like working at a radio station? Like what are the departments?
Yeah, cool. So I'll use my current station as an example because it's sort of a better structured, more traditional radio station. So I work at a radio station called the new HOT 89.9. We're based in Ottawa, Ontario. We're number one in the market. Our morning show is number one in the market.
No, but not a big deal.
Yeah, just context. And we
just
have been
so you know, we're the number one radio station in Ottawa.
Not at all because of me. It's been that way for
to be
quite
the
some
host.
time. Yeah, part of a team, definitely part of a team, and they were like that before I got there. So really, no thanks to me at all. But so the radio station, we probably have, I would say, we're two radio stations in that in Ottawa. Between the two radio stations, I'd say we probably have 35 employees. So in that
between the two
stations.
Okay.
So we probably have about 10 on-air staff. We have 3 full-time producers. So those are people that are making the commercials. Those are people that are doing what we call imaging. So when you hear between songs like the new HOT 89.9, that's imaging.
Okay.
And there's a lot of
Why isn't it called sounding?
That's a great, I don't know.
Bad joke. That was a dad joke. Sorry.
I still
okay,
laughed.
go ahead.
And so they do. There's a lot. They input music into the system, and they do quite a bit. When you listen to a radio station, every single element that you hear, whether it's a song, whether it's a piece of imaging or whatever, that's all just a different file, and all of those files have to be input into the system and done properly. So we have 3 full-time guys that just do that. We also have a creative department of 3 people. Their entire jobs is to write commercials. 3 people.
So they write the commercials for the people that want to advertise on the radio station.
Exactly. Yeah. We have 2 people. They're in. It's a department called traffic. It's not car traffic. It's actually inputting the commercials into the systems because you want to make sure. Let's say you're advertising with us, an insurance company. We want to make sure that you're not right next to another insurance company. In fact, we want you to probably be in a different hour than another insurance company if we can space it out that way. Same goes for car dealerships and everything else. Your category
and the insurance as an insurance broker, I would want that as well.
Of course.
Like I don't want to. Yeah.
Absolutely. That is purely for you guys, right? Like so much of our company is built to A, keep listeners happy, and B, keep advertisers happy, right? That's our business, our entire business.
And without the advertisers, you guys don't have a business. That's the revenue.
That's
right?
the pure revenue, and that brings us to our sales department, which is, I believe now they're maybe 8 or 9 people. All they do is sell radio advertising for those 2 radio stations. Now, actually, they sell quite a few more things. We can sell billboards, we can sell digital advertising, we can sell your SEO, stuff like that.
Where do you sell the digital advertising?
The digital can be everything. We have people within the Stingray team that also do whether it's Instagram or Facebook or ads, just general ads online. I would assume through Google. I'm not super well versed on that end of things, but we do a lot of that. And now with Stingray, one of our new ways that we're and this is a huge advantage for us in the market. We do all of the music in a lot of stores. So if you walk into a Metro, for example, the music you hear. Metro has to pay for that. They have to pay money to have that on air, right? To have any store you walk into. And Stingray provides that service where we come in and we'll build you a perfect playlist. And also for select stores, for big franchises or big companies like a Metro, we can also sell ads within those if you'd like. So for example, let's say you're having a sale on toothpaste. Then we'll say, great, okay, so from this date to this date, we're going to mention 3 times an hour, go down to aisle 12, we have toothpaste on sale for $2.99 for your Crest or whatever. But then we can also sell them a radio campaign that goes with that. We can also sell them the digital. We can sell them, it's all sort of a one-stop shop, and that's an advantage that we have that other media companies don't traditionally have, and that's because Stingray is built as a digital audio company.
Yeah, because what does Stingray do exactly? And just before I ask that question, I actually have another question. Because I know that they have I used to live in Point St. Charles, right next to the Old Port in Montreal.
Yep.
They have a beautiful, spectacular
Stunning
office in the Old Port of Montreal. Is that the head office?
Yeah, that is the head office. So
are they Canadian based?
Yep, absolutely.
So yeah, what do they do?
Stingray Stingray actually purchased us. We used to be a company called NewCap. It was based out of Newfoundland, and they had about 100 radio stations across the country. Okay. A lot of smaller stations, some big stations, and they purchased us right before COVID, 2019. Questionable time to buy a series of radio stations. But they paid $500 million to purchase NewCap, these 100 radio stations across the country.
$500 million.
$500 million. Massive purchase. It was huge. And
that's how big the business is for radio?
Yeah. Oh, man, it's great. It's a huge business. It's a huge business. Now, COVID has impacted that business, and we can talk about
negative
that.
Or positive?
Negatively.
Okay, we'll get into that.
Yeah, we'll get into that. But $500 million for, again, we're not the biggest player in Canadian radio either, right? This is we're a substantial player in the market.
Who'd be the biggest? Bell?
Probably Bell or Rogers would be the two.
Okay.
So Stingray originally they started as a karaoke company. Funny enough, that's where their bread and butter was karaoke. Eric Boyko, who's the CEO and one of the creators, he's a lifelong entrepreneur, and he told us this story. He went to Florida one time, met a couple guys. He was looking for his next business. They said they're in the karaoke business. It's super successful. You make all sorts of money because you're licensing music is essentially what the business is. It's licensing music and selling that. Things happened with their wives down south, and then a few months later, they were looking to sell the business, and they gave him a call. They remember this guy they met on vacation. Gets a lot more sassy than that, but that's the version I'll give on the podcast. And and they call Eric Boyko. He purchases the business, and now it's turned it into this like gigantic juggernaut. So it initially started as karaoke. He had a different business beforehand. I'm not exactly sure.
Okay, so yeah, he did that, sold, probably had a pile of money.
Exactly, had a pile of money, bought this karaoke business, and now what Stingray is, the bread and butter really is your satellite subscriptions. So if you subscribe to Bell or Videotron or whatever, you probably have Stingray music channels.
Yes.
Yeah. So you're paying for that every single month. Every month that you have your subscription, I think it's like, I don't know, $2 or $3 of that goes right to Stingray. So we're in, I don't know the exact, let's say 60 countries around the world just based on that service. That's a lot of money coming in every month. We're one of the top 5 or 10 largest audio companies in the entire world.
Stingray.
Which is crazy.
Wow.
And they wanted to add radio to that portfolio. So we're beyond just karaoke now. We're beyond just the TV stuff. We're also in cars. They just sold a whole big thing to, I believe it was Tesla, or was another car company, where you can now have karaoke in cars. And that's karaoke is a ridiculously big business that you would never think it is.
No.
Apparently it is. And obviously we have the radio stuff. We do all of the in-store audio, like I said, which is huge business as well. A lot of, especially mom and pop shops, they don't realize that you can't just put a Spotify playlist on in a store.
Yeah, that was my question. You're not allowed to do that?
No, you have to pay you have to pay royalties essentially. Anytime a music is broadcast in a public space, even for a wedding, even for a really anything, anytime if I want to play music outside, technically I have to pay into I can't remember what the governing body is right now, but you have to pay an amount. It's not a huge amount.
Who regulates it? Like, okay, so let's say, for example, like I go to a restaurant. A lot of times restaurants, they're just going to play a Spotify
Absolutely,
playlist.
Yeah.
So technically, what you're saying, they're not allowed
there
to
could
do
be
that?
No, there could be an official come by and fine them find out what it is.
Would that be a CRTC official? Would that be?
It's a CAN. People might be yelling at their phones right now. Who know what it's called? For some reason, it's escaping me right now. But yeah, they could get fined for that. And so we have boots on the ground that will go to these businesses and say, hey, just so you know that Spotify playlist you're playing, you could really get fined here, and we can offer you.
And what are the fines? I guess substantial.
I would imagine they're substantial enough. Yeah, and the cost is not. It's not thousands of dollars a month to play the music. I think it might be $100 a month or something like that.
So
Which
it's like peanuts.
Exactly. But it's better than getting fined, right?
Yeah.
And you want to do things the right way. But essentially, it's just guaranteeing that artists are getting paid for their music getting played. Yeah.
Have you ever seen the show? Let's we're going to go to the next topic now. You ever seen the show? I forget what it's called, but it's about the Spotify founders. It was on Netflix.
No.
Excellent show.
Okay.
Basically how he created it, what he had to go through, the hoops and valleys that he had to really, really, really cool story. But so back to the original question, or one of the questions that you asked about 5 or 7 minutes ago. Why has radio been impacted negatively after COVID?
Yeah, so I mean, COVID, first of all, was a shock to so many businesses, right? Radio especially. The first thing that impacted us was there weren't cars on the road, right? So listening habits changed. So suddenly now we have to educate our audience, which in a way, this actually worked out quite well. Since COVID, 98% of our radio listeners have come back, which is amazing. 98% is the number, which is fantastic. Yeah. And what we saw now,
doing something right.
Yeah, exactly. Which that's great, and I think people wouldn't necessarily have that belief, right? What it allowed us the opportunity to do was also train our listening audience to listen in different ways. So to push our app, to push smart speakers, to push web listening, and now we're seeing, I think it's about 15 to 20% of our listening is done through those modes of listening, right, through those mediums, which is great. It's great to have alternate modes, not just sitting in your car listening to us or through a traditional radio. Unfortunately, what it also did for a lot of businesses was just completely knock out their marketing budget. Radio is expensive. It's not a cheap medium.
I'm going through it right now. Yeah, it is very expensive.
It's expensive.
Very expensive.
Right, but it works. It's expensive for a reason, right? Yeah. Your ROI is fantastic for radio, much better than digital, as far as I understand. Again, not my expertise.
It's just like for if I can just pipe in for a little bit. What I find when you advertise, at least this is the feedback that I get from consumers and current clients. When you advertise on a radio station or you advertise on TV, for whatever reason, people see it as like more this
legitimate.
company. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
So it's like when you hear a digital ad on Spotify, for example. Hey, call KBD Insurance for a home and car insurance quote or whatever the hell it is. Or you hear that same ad and it's on 89.9. People are automatically going to think like, oh, okay, like it legitimizes the company a lot more.
And you know what else it is radio is such a personal medium, and we hear it all the time that listeners feel like they're like our best friend, right? They feel like they know everything about us because in a way they kind of do. They spend so much time with us, and it's a conversation. They feel like they're in the room hanging out with us. That it's almost like anything that's on the radio station becomes an endorsement by the radio station, and I think that's so impactful, and that's something you really don't get with social media when you're just mindlessly scrolling. Obviously, social media can be a great tool to advertise for businesses. That's not in question, but I think there's something kind of special about radio and different about radio that it really works. It really does. It's
I
great.
agree.
Yeah,
I totally agree with you.
And I think there's a lot more people than people realize that listen to radio still. And so I knew we were going to probably chat about this, so I pulled some numbers from.
Got the data.
Got the data. 86% of Canadians, adults 25 to 54, listen to radio on a weekly basis. 86%.
86.
Which is crazy. Imagine I told you.
So it hasn't gone anywhere.
I mean, it's certainly decreased. Like if there's. It has decreased. Now there's more options, right?
Yes.
So let's not kid ourselves, right? Some people listen.
Like for example, I never listen to radio.
Yeah,
I listen to podcasts. I always have my podcast. I have Spotify. I will occasionally listen to TSN 690 just if the Habs are doing well.
Sure.
But like outside of that, I don't really listen to radio.
Yeah. So 62% of in-car audio is radio, which back in the day it would have been more than that. But even still, there's. I mean, it's still significant, right?
Yes.
39% of all audio listening, whether that's music or podcasts or audiobooks or whatever, by Canadians is radio. If you were to, I don't know, if there was a new app, some new social media, and you were to say that 86% of people, adults 25 to 54, were using this app, people would be losing their minds. You know what I mean? But it's still an extremely significant medium. And I'm a big advocate for it. I think it's great. I think we could be doing a better job marketing it, and I think maybe modernizing it. But I think
how so?
I think. Well, with the challenges of COVID, with less money coming into the radio stations, a lot of radio stations had to pivot, right? Just like a lot of businesses had to pivot. And I think one of the things we got rid of was young talent. There's no longer the roles for young talent. You used to have your evening person, for example. Would be sort of like a training ground. It would be someone you believe in and someone who's obviously good enough to get on your programming, but someone that you want to sort of, it's that 10,000 hour thing. You need a lot of practice on radio to get good at radio. So it's a great training ground. Now there's not really a lot of evening shows. A lot of them are syndicated. So it'll come out of one market and go to other markets. And we can talk about syndication because our show is syndicated. Same thing for weekends. There used to be a ton of weekend opportunities for jocks, and now there just really aren't. And that concerns me about the future of radio. There's a lot of smart people running these companies, so I'm sure it concerns them as well. But we don't have that next sort of generation of talent that's coming up, which I think is scary. It's in a way it's good for me because I'm kind of the youngest generation in it. There's not a lot of 25-year-olds that are breathing down my neck, but there should be. You know what I mean? Like I think that's the way that the world works. Is a generation kind of takes over, and then the next one comes and does it better. And I don't know if that next one is necessarily coming.
Do you think the future of radio is good or bad?
I think it's different. I think I think we're trending towards it being less and less significant. I think it also depends on vehicles, although radio far transcends vehicles. But I think when vehicles become autonomous, the way they are now, where you still have to have two hands on the wheel and you're still paying attention, although your car's kind of doing everything, you still got to be, you can't be watching a movie. All right. That's one thing. Radio will be fine. Yeah. When all of a sudden cars are driving around and it basically becomes a living room in your car and it's just
which I think will happen in our lifetime.
Oh, 100. I can't see how it wouldn't. Yeah. I think
it'll be safer too. I mean, like the computer's going to do a better job than humans driving.
For sure. And especially if all the cars can talk to each other, right? Yeah. At that point, there's not going to be any accidents. They're going to be communicating with each other, right?
Until AI takes over.
Exactly.
They want to kill us all.
Yeah, well, no, it'll be AI in the cars driving
That's how it's
around.
going to start. Yeah. It's going to start like that. The AI's going to be like, all right, let's go. And there's going to be a bunch of accidents.
It's exactly
kill everybody.
Right. We're all going to be on our little Wally balls and we won't even notice. It'll just be like that. All of a sudden we're gone. Yeah. No, I think like things will change, and I think radio is going to have to adapt in a big way. But I think the thing that is great about radio is the personalities within radio. Same as podcasts, same as television, same as a YouTube channel, TikTok, anything. It's all personality driven. And I think as long as we have that, I think radio will be okay. But it will have to adapt, of course.
Do you think it's ever going to get to the point where radio stations are hosted on a platform like Spotify, for example? Or is it kind of like that right now? Like, so correct me if I'm wrong. Stingray, if you is there just like an app just like Spotify, I can go to Stingray and there's a bunch of stuff I can listen to.
A bunch of radio stations you can listen to. Every radio station. What you can't do is shows on demand, and that's mostly by design. We launched our podcast, the Hot Tub podcast. Our show's called The Morning Hot Tub. So we launched a podcast this year, and we were so unsure about whether or not we should go into the podcast space because 100% of our revenue, or 99% of our revenue, is based on ads on the radio. If we start giving our product away somewhere else, is that going to mean we have less listeners during our actual 6 to 9 morning show? How is that going to impact our numbers, which then impacts our bottom line? And I think we were a little hesitant to change, more so than most shows, I would think, because we do have that sort of success going for us that we didn't necessarily want to try new things. We've ended up doing it. It's been a great success. Our numbers on air haven't been impacted, and we have pretty good numbers on the podcast. So that's been great. That's been a great change. But in terms of doing on-demand content, I don't know. I'd still be so worried about putting the whole show. The podcast is just slivers of the show. I'd be so worried about just offering it. But other shows do that. So I don't know what the answer is there. But it is very important that you maintain your live listeners, because that is our bread and butter. We have this giant infrastructure of employees, and we know how to market and how to optimize the returns on audio better than anybody else. Radio's great at it. Why would we give that away for free elsewhere?
Interesting. What's your opinion of Spotify in the sense, of how they pay the creators being the musicians
Artists, yeah.
or the podcast, the artists.
Yeah, it's not great.
What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, it's radio is actually the medium that pays the best to artists. That's not our choice. That's just the way that it is at the CRTC. But I think most radio stations or radio companies are quite proud of that we do pay pretty well. I mean, it's tough to say because it's a private company and they can kind of do what they want with that, right? Like they're providing the platform, and so they can dictate how much they're paying out to artists. Obviously, it would be great if it was better, but for a podcast, for example, you really need to find a sponsor to be profitable. Like you're not going to be making money just based on your views alone.
Nope.
You have to find a title sponsor and then maybe other sponsors.
That is the business model. If you don't have a sponsor, you're not going to be able to.
That's exactly it.
You're not going to have a podcast because you have to make money somehow. What's the other way? Sell merch.
You can sell merch, but even the merch is great, but there's very few creators that are getting rich on merch. You know, merch is a great sort of side product, but it comes with sponsors. Sponsors are the big thing.
Do you listen to podcasts yourself?
Yeah, absolutely.
What are some of your favorite podcasts?
I mean, Chicklets is always everybody loves
the Chicklets. Yeah, I like the
Chicklets.
Yeah.
I bounce around a lot as well. This Freemium podcast, really good. I really enjoy that.
Yes.
I like the Daily. It's a New York Times podcast. I like.
I've listened to the
couple
Daily
Vox podcasts that I like. I really bounce around a lot. I take since I work in morning radio, I take a lot of naps, and so what I'll do is I'll put like a New York Times podcast on that's interesting enough to like stimulate my brain where I don't have like a hamster wheel going on in my brain, but boring enough that I can fall asleep.
That you can fall asleep.
Yeah, which is like New York Times finds that it's right in there, man. It's like it's the perfect.
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
I don't know if it does either, but they get those hits from me, that's for sure.
You ever been to New York to go see the New York Times where their head office is?
For whose head office? Oh, the New York Times. No, I haven't. But it's huge,
cool.
right?
It's just like a really cool building. Like when you walk in, it's like it's an iconic news brand. I would say probably the most iconic in North America. New York Times, more than the LA Times, more than I'm trying to think of a company. Maybe Washington Post.
Yeah, Washington Post.
I think New York Times has it like up here.
Yeah, I think they're probably one too. Like they're huge publications. Massive.
What's your opinion on journalism like today? Do you fall I feel like you're kind of like in that space
it's in that
little
world.
bit. Yeah,
for sure.
What's your opinion on journalistic integrity these days, I guess, because there's a lot of stuff, there's a lot of noise out there.
Sure.
And we're getting to a point, I find, that it's very difficult to know who's telling the truth and who's giving like the real facts.
Thing is, I'll always trust a legitimate news source more than some guy on Twitter, because there is that sort of like built-in. They need to be at least somewhat reputable, just based on the industry that they're in, right? If you're blatantly telling lies, it's unlikely that you're going to survive in that space for a reputable company. And again, I'm talking like the New York Times, the Washington Post, or I know those are both liberal leaning, but I'm sure there's right wing papers or publications as well that are similar. But I think if you have that sort of legitimate organization behind you, I think there's always sort of that onus on you to be a little bit more non-biased, But like with all this Epstein,
do you think
stuff,
the New York Times is non-biased?
Oh, they're super biased. Of course they are. They're going to have a natural bias, but I think it's rooted in fact, right? They can't just go and they're going to skew it in the way that they want, but the same way.
Like they'll always give their news through the lens of.
For sure, exactly. But are they like lying about facts? I think that's the difference. Whereas you can go on sort of alternative publications or even just Twitter straight up. I think journalism is maybe not in a great place, but I think I trust quote unquote mainstream media more than I trust some guy on Twitter. Are you on Twitter a lot, or X?
I'm not on X that much, to be honest. I find it's a very noisy place, and honestly, when I get on there, it doesn't really make me feel good about myself. It's like there's all this. You're gonna get some really intense content on there.
Totally.
And people hurting each other, people fighting, people. It's just it's intense.
And you know what it is?
It's too intense.
It's so everything is extreme, right?
Yes.
On one side or the other, and even not political. Yeah, everything is just it's like an attack on your brain.
Yeah.
And then of course you're gonna click this like weird fight comes up. You're gonna click it, and now the algorithm thinks that this is what you want. And it's just. And also, I don't want to see Elon Musk's posts anymore. For some reason, it always seems to go back to him. I don't know. It very much feels like his toy.
What do you think? Do you think it's a good thing or a bad thing that he bought Twitter?
Is it a good thing or a bad thing? I mean, it's a bad thing for his investors. This week.
Thanks, brother.
One of the companies one of the firms that invested $300 million into his purchase of X, they reported that they believe that the company is worth 71% less than it was when he bought it. So I would say for his investors, a bad thing. For at him. I don't know if
but
he cares
okay.
about money.
I didn't ask that question. I didn't frame that question very well. Do you think Twitter or X has? Yes, it's a private. Are you on the side of it's a private company? They can do whatever they want because it's a private company. And this is a very. There's a lot of mixed emotions and opinions on this. Or do you see it as more of a town square, your online identity, where people should have the right to express their voice and opinion on a platform like that? More on the free speech side. Like, where do you see that? And there's an argument on both sides.
Oh, absolutely. So and an argument that I could honestly side with on both sides. Right?
Yeah,
like
same.
I kind of understand both perspectives, and I'd love to know what you feel about it. I think, it's a private company, and they can do what they want. But I think there's also a responsibility. Anytime you're creating a public space like that, even us on the radio, we have a responsibility to be factually correct, which we don't talk about news on our show, and we can get into that strategy if you want. But you have a responsibility, same as Joe Rogan does on his platform. He has a large listening audience. He has a responsibility to like fact check himself sometimes, or have on certain guests, different people, which I think sometimes he does well, sometimes he doesn't. I think anybody with an audience or anybody with influence has a responsibility to the world, to humanity, to try to moderate that in some way that is fair and balanced and not just not biased. Yeah. Do you feel similarly?
I don't. I think the days of having a non-biased opinion are like this point in time
just gone.
Yeah, they're gone. It's very like polarized. I do absolutely think that people need to be giving out proper facts, but I think everyone, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, when they're giving the facts or when they're having their conversations, I think everybody naturally is just going to see it through the lens of either the right or the left. And I don't want to get like too political, but it's just, and I think now,
that's brutal.
It is brutal. Like the days of even like reading or listening to the CBC back in 40 years ago before we were born. But I was asking my parents and all of their friends and stuff. They're like, it was definitely not as. It's kind of a liberal mouthpiece now.
Sure.
Like they kind of like.
I would say they see the world through a liberal lens.
Yes.
I'd put it that way. Mouthpiece feels wrong. It feels too much, but I certainly would agree that they see the world through a liberal lens.
Yes,
that's clear.
And that's not, and there isn't like the counter to that in Canada. So basically, and it's also, it's publicly funded, or a big portion of the company's publicly funded. And I don't want to get you in trouble, so I'm just going to be very careful with what I'm saying here. But it's just like, I absolutely think that the news they're going to give, it's going to be through a liberal lens, and a lot of our country don't agree with that side, and therefore they just end up. They don't listen to them at all. And I think there's I don't know what's going to happen with if the CRTs is going to allow this. I've heard it's very, very, very complicated to open up a media company in Canada.
Very much so, yeah.
There's a lot of regulation. If there was a company like, I don't want to say a Fox because that's kind of more that's like really extreme on the right. But I think if they're...
there's Rebel News, which is
they're
sort of
up and coming.
Fox.
Yeah.
It's a little more...
they're pretty raw.
And it's what I was talking about with journalistic integrity with larger corporations. I don't think they necessarily have that, right? Like I think
they don't have that now, but
also
to
publish something that's not completely rooted in fact.
Fair, but the CBC has done that as well in the past. So there's there's certain times, and I think that the media, the legacy media in Canada, they put a lot of effort into, I'd go as far as saying smearing Rebel News. And Rebel News does sometimes come up with facts, and it's a bunch of bullshit. And you're like, dude, this is way too extreme. But there are some times when they're asking questions, and they're good, fair questions.
Absolutely,
and people are like, oh, you're Rebel News. You have no authenticity.
No, that's fair.
But they're slowly going, and I think people, especially, there's a big divide in our country as well now. And a lot of people do not like to listen to CBC. They don't like it. And so they will listen to Rebel News. And I think... I don't know. If there's just a nice way to have everyone come up and stop fighting with each other so much, I don't think it's going to happen for a while. But I didn't really answer your question, but I think it's just.
I know what you mean, though. I think there is a space in our current media sphere for more of a sort of if we're doing the left wing right
leaning,
then
a legitimate right leaning media network.
Exactly. Yes. Because if Rebel News is going to be your only source, I think you're going to be very skewed in how you see the world, because it is quite far right.
I agree.
Right? I think something more towards the middle, I think that could only benefit people. But we also just in general need to stop sensationalizing every goddamn thing. Everything is such a big deal. Yeah. It's exhausting.
Yeah.
It's a lot. So, we as a show, we're a talk show.
Yeah. How do we solve this? Instead of after I listen to a radio station, instead of being pissed off.
Yeah.
How do you change that? And
I'll
make
tell you
it
how we
like,
solve it.
and feel good about myself after I listen to 89.9.
Cool. So how we solve it is we ignore it.
Okay.
And we don't talk about any of that. We try to be, especially during COVID, we made a company, especially a radio station decision. We are going to be your mind vacation. We're not going to be your source for news. We gave you the main, if you need like the main facts, we have a news break at the top of the hour and halfway through. So 6:37 and so on, just in the mornings, and we'll give you just the facts. And just the biggest news stories. Otherwise, we're focusing on the positive and the hyper positive, and we want you to feel good. And our news breaks, each story is like 2 lines. No one's coming to us for news, right? We're reading off the wire most of the time. Like, we're not your source for news. No one's coming here for news. What they're coming for us for is laughs and a good time. And
keep the politics out of it.
We don't talk about politics at all.
Which is great because you can't escape it.
No.
I was pissed off, and it's gotten better now. I was fucking furious when politics and all this COVID crap kind of spewed into sports. Sure. I love sports. Sports is my mind vacation, as you just said.
Enough,
and I'm watching sports. I'm like, oh my God, it's here too now.
Yeah.
And I was like, I would just try and find networks that didn't talk about it because I want to just watch sports, enjoy it. I don't want to hear about like the left or the right or politics or like all this COVID stuff going on. I don't want to hear about it.
It's fair.
I want to watch my sports team and root for them.
And I get that. And then there's certainly times where there's movements that we there's the Black Lives Matter movement, for example, and that's obviously something that like it was a massive movement and something that we as a station are like, okay, no, this we need to like let's lend our support to this and let's try to tell those stories. But generally speaking, when it comes to politics, we are like, it's just not for us. It's not something that we want to be a part of, and or just general shittiness. The world is so shitty right now. We just don't want to feed into that. We want to be sort of a bright spot, and we get feedback all the time. Like, hey, thanks for
brightening up my day.
Yeah, that's it. We just want to be a laugh. We just want to hang out and shoot the shit and make fun of each other.
What do you guys do to make the audience laugh?
Yeah, so our show is it's essentially a talk show. So we talk we're a music radio station, but our show is structured differently than any other radio show in Canada. We talk for about 40 minutes an hour, which is a lot.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Fuck.
We
Okay.
play
I thought it was more of
songs
a
an hour. So our station is a music station. Yeah, we're 4 people on the show.
Okay.
It's the morning hot tub with Mahler, Rush, Jenny, and Brady.
Yeah.
Okay. And so we chat about anything, whether it's stupid stories, whether it's playing games. One of our more popular segments is Brady's Game of Joy, where it's just me basically making them do really uncomfortable things for 10 minutes, and it's great. It's great. Putting them in uncomfortable situations and making them do silly things. We try to just be nonstop laughs and fun, and that can be exhausting at times for us. It's not always, it's hard at 6 a.m. to try to be funny and interesting when you're hungover from the night before. And I don't know.
How many times have you listened to the movie Good Morning Vietnam?
Once, but I get the sentiment of it.
Because I just think about 6 a.m. because he would always, like Robin Williams, he'd come in,
good morning. Yeah, absolutely. But that's what it is, right? We wake up all stupid early, and then you get to work, and we kind of don't talk before the show because we're all just tired,
save your energy.
and we're preparing, and we also don't want to like be like, hey, what'd you do last night? We want to save that for the show. We talk a lot. So it's pretty quiet before the show. Everybody does their own prep, whether it's the news or traffic or whatever. We all provide things to the show. And the beauty of our show is we don't tell each other what we're doing. So everybody brings certain aspects, and we all just sort of surprise each other, and that's something that no other show really does. They typically have show meetings beforehand, and then after. So
is a lot of it off the cuff?
It's 100% off the cuff.
Wow, great!
And nothing is staged, nothing is set up. Everything, 100% of it.
Well, you even have kind of just like the big. So it's like you talk about this, you talk about this, you talk about this, you talk about this,
nothing,
and then just
nothing.
Go.
Everything is just go. So
do you have to? Have you ever come into a show? I hope your bosses aren't listening. Do you ever come into a show where you're absolutely like, I did not prepare for anything, and you're just completely off the cuff?
But the way we've built it is that we have. We have so the way a lot of radio stations work, there's prep services, so you can get like a bunch of different stories and stuff from there. And the way we've structured the show is that we can always sort of go to those services they're called kickers, where they'll get us kicked off. So for example, there was one today. a couple had $4,000 cash. Their dog ate it and puked up 500 of it, shit out the other 3,500. They had to go through the shit and like find the serial number so they can go to the bank and get the cash back. That's a great kicker. You know, you start talking about that, and then you talk about like, okay, well, I mean, I guess I'd rather go through a dog's shit than a human shit. And really, would you? I feel like the human shit's better. And then you
call someone and say, what would you rather do?
Well, yeah, and then you just get 9 minutes later, you know, you're talking about this time that Jenny, the girl on our show, like caught someone's vomit at a bar. You know what I mean? Like it just sort of spirals, and we like to always think of taking right turns. That's something we always talk about is when we're having a conversation. Okay, where can we go with this, but not somewhere predictable? We want to take a right turn, and we want to be like we want to be out there, and I think that's different. What differentiates our show with other shows?
Are all your co-hosts as energetic and outgoing as you are?
I think I'm definitely the most extroverted. I think
because your brain must go a mile a minute.
Yeah, but I think theirs do too in different ways. I think we're all super creative people. I would say I'm the most extroverted. I like to go out to events and meet people and stuff. They do as well, but in doses. They got into radio for a reason. They like the comfort of being in a room and just chatting amongst a small group, whereas I love to get out there. But they're all incredibly creative people in their own ways, which is great.
Did you ever used to, who was the guy on CNN? Larry.
Oh my God, I can see his name.
Can you fact check this for us?
Larry King.
Larry King, thank you. Mm-hmm. Larry King. So I did not know this. Larry King, when he would have his guests on.
Yeah. He would not prep.
He would not prep.
Yeah, it's crazy.
He would not prep.
Yeah.
And so when he was asking the questions like, holy shit, you do this? That's what you do?
Which sometimes makes him look like an idiot, but that's also fun. Like you're having that like engaging conversation with someone, you're learning about them.
Yes.
Not unlike right now.
And he would always sit like, he would always be
he'd be hunched over.
Yeah,
oh my God, that man's posture.
And he had a great radio voice.
Great radio voice.
What a radio voice.
Yeah, great broadcaster and started on the radio, Larry King.
I believe it.
Yeah.
What's your opinion of Howard Stern?
I think Stern is, he's incredible.
I love the guy.
What he did was what he's built and continues to do it is amazing. He essentially is the reason that satellite radio exists. Like he was such a juggernaut that he created a new media, which is, or medium, I should say, which is crazy. It was all on his back, and he deserves every penny he made. I never really got into his universe, but I love the fact that he created a universe. Yeah. We try to do that as well. With everybody knows who our wives are. My wife gets recognized all the time. They know a lot of like intimate details about our life, like creating a whole thing, a whole like network of different characters and stuff. I think it's so cool. It's awesome.
Are you a celebrity in Ottawa now?
Oh, I hate that word, but I would say I'm a known.
Okay, let me change it. Yeah. Are you a radio celebrity?
Sure. Yeah.
You're a radio celebrity?
I'll take that. Yeah.
And what's it like? This is a question because and one of the reasons I want to have your opinion on this is I'm going to plug my company KBD. We have an office in Montreal. We have an office in Ottawa.
Yeah.
So I love the town of Ottawa. I like going. I like visiting. I like staying over. I like staying I always stay at the Andaz. I love the Andaz.
Great spot. Yeah, great rooftop bar.
And it's just like, I don't know. I'm learning about the town a lot. You know, our office is in Gloucester. I'm learning all this. You got Canada. It's on the other side. You got Gloucester on that side. You got downtown, Byward Market, like all these places.
Exactly. Yeah.
What's coming from a person who now lives in Ottawa? What is for you the biggest differences between Ottawa and Montreal?
It is night and day. It's a very different city, but I love both. I've lived in Ottawa.
They
now
are
for
different.
8 years. They're
certainly
different.
And like no person in Ottawa-tonian or whatever you call them. No person who's grown up in Ottawa. No person's gonna disagree with that. Like everyone's gonna say they're significantly different.
They're super different, and I don't think Montrealers understand Ottawa, and I don't think Ottawans, which is the worst name, and they Ottawans understand Montrealers. Like I think they're two completely different worlds.
Yes.
You have to keep in mind Ottawa is a government town and it's a tech town. Those are the two industries, right? So you have a lot of middle class people. It's very oatmeal cookie in a lot of ways, whereas you don't have sort of the sandpaper that you have in Montreal. You don't have the culture that you have in Montreal. But that said, it's a much smaller city than Montreal. It's 1 million people in Ottawa.
Yes. I love when people in Ottawa complain about the traffic. I'm like, this is nothing.
It's adorable.
Like, literally. You're like, you sat in 10 minutes of traffic.
Exactly.
You're like, there's so much traffic.
You got
today.
one highway. All right.
Like,
okay. Let me tell you about the Illitour right now. All right. Yeah. It's much different. They call it a small town with it's a small town in a big city or a small whatever. You know what I mean? It's everybody kind of knows everybody in a way. But I think that also makes for a really, really great radio market because it is smaller, and so we interact with so many people, and something like 20% of the city listens to us on a weekly basis, which is super cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And so we really get to, sort of integrate ourselves within the city, which is great.
And what do you guys do to integrate yourselves with the city outside of doing the radio? Like in terms of, because I know you do a bit of events, you do a bit of fundraising,
for sure.
You do a bit of like giving back to the community. What do you guys do?
Absolutely. So we do a lot of different charity events, but we like to have a lot of touch points with the audience as well. We like to do a lot of sort of silly things and invite them into our world. So for example, earlier in 2023, Jenny and I, who's a girl on the show, awesome. We did firefighter training with Ottawa Fire, and so we went out and we put out fires, and we got a whole day of training, and it was absolutely awesome and fantastic. And then at the end of it, Ottawa Fire said to me, "Hey, we do this like sort of celebrity calendar. Do you want to be one of the months?" And I was like, "Great." So they took a bunch. So
you
of
are a
pictures
celebrity
of me.
in Ottawa.
Whatever. Shut up. Okay. and so then they took a whole bunch of pictures of me, and I totally forgot about it. And then a few months later, he hit me up and he was like, "Hey, can I come on the show?" I was like, "Great."
Was it like one of those firemen with the shirts off? And
oh, dude, absolutely. Not with the shirt off. And also look at me. Like there's nothing going on here. All right. It was like super
bikini,
hokey.
Yeah. Okay,
I'm a radio host. I made it goofy and whatever. And so then he actually presented me with my own calendar. He was messing with me, and he made a calendar 12 months of me. But then our listeners started freaking out. They were like, "Hey, like I want to buy this."
Yeah.
So we did a limited run. We did 1,000 calendars, and we sold out 1,000 calendars in less than 24 hours.
Wow.
And so we had people come to our office to get a signed calendar.
And it was just photos of you?
It's just photos of me. And it's the most ridiculous calendar.
How many of them were with your shirt off?
And that's 0, thank God. Thank God. Pants off, all of them. No. No, they were
like
they're
a
pretty
super
tame,
seductive look?
They were all very seductive. Yeah, and this is after like a day of doing the firefighter stuff, so I'm all sweaty and I got like soot all over me and stuff. It was super ridiculous, but all that to say, we try to have these points of interaction with our audience. Now they're bringing home these calendars, and I got CHEO is the Children's Hospital in Ottawa. In the nurses' ward at CHEO, they have one of these calendars up. And so we try to sort of integrate ourselves into the lives of our listeners as well, and invite them to come to the studio, invite them to be a part of our universe that we've created, which I think is a pretty unique thing for a lot of shows.
It's very authentic.
Yeah.
And would you say it's like well, obviously it sounds like you're clearly very enthusiastic about the job that you have right now. What do you like about it so much?
I think I like that every day is different. I like that it's entertainment, but it's also creative entertainment. I'm not just reporting news. I'm not a part of someone else's world. I'm not talking about we talk about celebrities and stuff, but we're doing it on our own terms, and so we get to be exaggerated versions of ourselves and entertain people. I'm not trying to sell a product. I'm not trying to. What I'm trying to do is sell ourselves, essentially, right? We're trying to get people's most valuable resource,
trying to be
and that's their
entertaining.
time. Exactly. We're trying to get them to pay a little bit more attention to us and spend some more time with us. And that's a lot of fun to do that in a creative way and in a fun way. It's like when you're a kid and you put on like a skit for your parents in the living room.
Yeah.
But it's like that every day from 6 to 9 a.m. with 3 people who are incredibly talented and who could help me put on that skit. So it's a lot of fun.
Did you specifically choose 89.9? Like, did you want to go to Ottawa, or were you just trying to do something and try to like move up the ladder in terms of the world of radio?
Sure.
And
So
it ended up being 89.9 in Ottawa.
Yeah, kind of essentially the latter. I did 8 years here at Hits FM in Montreal, and that was all through CEGEP and university, and then a couple years after my studies, or about a year after. And at that point, it was it was a smaller station. I was ready to move on, and so they hired me in Ottawa. There was a position open. A weekend shift, which is like really like bottom of the barrel, but it was an amazing radio station. And I was like, hey, I talked to some people in the industry, and they're like, hey, take the job. It's a step up. You're getting your foot in the door of a great company.
Yeah.
They're going to train you. They're going to help you out. And I was like, absolutely. Let's go to Ottawa.
And what do they
for
do
1
to
or 2
train
years.
you?
So there's a lot of, we call them air checks, where you listen to your show back, and they help you. There's a lot of different sort of ways that you can.
I do that to myself.
Do you? You listen to yourself back? Well, you listen to the podcast.
Yeah, I will definitely like listen to the podcast. I think that I have a long way to go. I'm not nearly like as articulate and quick and funny and all these things as you are, but I definitely try to improve.
Of course, as you
and
should.
I listen
right?
to, like, at the beginning, my first podcast, you'll hear a lot of uhs, a lot of is, a lot of like, awkward silences.
But it feels very natural now, right? It's just a conversation.
We're just having a conversation.
Well, that's exactly it.
And plus, it makes it easier with a guest like you, because you do most of the
you.
talking. And I'm not saying that in a bad way.
Yeah,
no,
sure.
Just ask the question and you go.
Well, thank you. I hope I hope it's okay. But no, I mean, putting a microphone on someone's face can be very intimidating for people for the first time, right?
Yes.
It can be a lot, and especially radio. There's very specific sort of muscles that you have to work over and over and over and over and over to get good at it or to get decent at it, and you really need to work with someone to kind of hone.
Can you give us some tips? Okay, so let's say there's someone who wants to start their own podcast or someone who wants to go into radio, but someone who's basically going to be speaking to an audience through audio. Can you give us like 3 main tips?
Okay. All right. Okay. If you want to sound, the pen comes out.
Yeah. I'm going to write this down.
Sure. If you want to sound warm and friendly, smile. It's going to feel weird when you're talking, but it comes across much more warm and much more.
So when you're by yourself in the studio, and no one,
especially early on in your career, you're smiling. You're doing a big cheesy smile, and it sounds you can hear the smile through the radio. That's it truly is that's a big one. Okay. They always teach you that in radio school. Another one is always be prepared and know you're out. Know what you want to. This maybe doesn't apply for a 2-hour-long podcast necessarily, but if I'm going on the radio for let's say a minute and a half or 60 seconds or whatever it is, I always want to know what I'm going to talk about. I don't necessarily need to structure out every word, although you do that when you first get started, just to sort of know the structure of a break. But know how you're going to wrap things up. Know sort of the general skeleton of what you're talking about. But at the end, instead of doing the, here's Tate McRae on the new Hot 89.9 or whatever, like you need it to have like a good closing line, and it's going to put a bow on everything. That's very, very important. And otherwise, my third thing is your voice is your instrument. So, keep that in mind the night before you're broadcasting. Maybe don't have that like last shot at 4:30 in the morning and scream Mr. Brightside while like smoking
Great
a dart.
song.
Absolutely fantastic.
Great
but when you start talking like this the next day, don't get me wrong, I've had those mornings, right? But it's your voice really is your instrument. It's like I don't know. It's like an athlete, damaging their hands or something. So
the third tip, in other words, is basically don't get all bamboozled the night before when you have to speak on the radio.
Sure, or just in general, keep in mind that your voice does matter, right? It matters, and drink a lot of water. And in radio school, they teach you I never did radio school. I actually taught radio school, but never actually went to radio school. But they do teach you to like some exercises to get your voice good. No actual professional radio host is doing that. Literally. No one's doing that, but we're all aware, right before we go on air, if you don't hear it on air, obviously, but we all kind of go like, and what
was the line in Anchorman what a great movie.
Oh, God, such a good movie. I'm bad with movie lines. It was
a funny movie. Yeah, it's like the king's calm. And he's like next to the blonde woman there. But anyways, it's really funny.
So tongue twisters is a big thing in radio school as well. That you have to do is you get a bunch of tongue twisters and you try to present them, and you learn how to accentuate your T's and not have a lisp on your S's, which I'm terrible at. There's like a lot of different techniques in speaking as well, and it also depends if you're doing legitimate news journalism on the radio. You're going to speak a lot different than if you're doing my job telling fart jokes. You know what I mean? Like it's a different type of radio.
So would you say that you're a better radio host today than you were, for example, 5 years ago?
I'm a better radio host today than I was yesterday and then the day before. Every day you do it, you get a little bit better. It's just that's what it is, man. It takes so long to get good at this, and again, just to go full circle on it, I think we need as an industry to be training new young people to take over for us, and I don't think we're necessarily doing that. I don't think like you can take a TikToker and just throw them on air. I don't even think you can necessarily take a podcaster and put them on the radio. It's
It's completely different.
It's such a different skill.
Completely different.
Yeah. And word economy is so much more important on the radio, and keeping up the energy levels, especially for a top 40 radio station. So for like a pop music based radio station, you want to keep the energy going. You want music underneath you. You want there's so many things. Also keep in mind on the radio, you're working a giant board with like 30 different buttons on it, or 30 different buttons that you'd actually push.
You work that?
So we actually I'm in my own separate studio. The other 3 are in their own studio. One guy works their board. I have my own board. So
like each of you are in like a box, I guess?
So they're in one sort of box, a room similar to this, like half the size of this. I'm in a separate room, which is a little smaller than theirs with like glass doors in between so we can see each other. But the reason I'm in my own room is so I can also take calls. I can queue up music. We have a lot of music going on. I can prepare things that I don't want them to hear things. So I'm in my own little space. Which is pretty important for the structure of our show. So I have my own giant board, and then there's another giant board in the other room.
If there was one thing that you want your listeners to know about 89.9 or about you in particular, what's the one thing? And this could be like how hard you work. This could be all the prep you guys do. It could be whatever. Like what's one thing that you want your audience to know about you hosting
the radio
89.9?
station. Yeah. I think it's how conscious we are of everything that goes on the radio. There's a lot that is very much off the cuff, but there's a lot of strategy and a lot of planning. We're famous for our contests.
Nothing ever happens by accident.
No,
like
exactly. Especially when it comes to contesting and stuff like that. We've done a lot of contests. We've given away a baby. We've given away $100,000. Literally, we had a contest called Win a Baby, where we gave 5 couples in vitro, and 4 of them took. One of them had twins. There's 5 babies in the world because of our radio station. Wow. Isn't that incredible? We paid for a gender reassignment surgery. Okay. We've done a lot of things through the years that are like really large contests that were very strategic in the moment, culturally relevant, and we can do less of those today given the climate. But like, there's everything we do is so strategic, and we have so many meetings about this stuff, and I think there's a lot of great, smart people behind the scenes that are hopefully putting together content that you enjoy.
Do you guys think that you have an influence on pop culture in Ottawa?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. It's hard
you
to say.
You could toot your
own
horn, but
and I don't. I'm not even just necessarily saying us, but I think anybody who has a platform does, right, to an extent. If there's X amount of listeners that we have listening to us quasi regularly, and then we call them P1s, like our like diehard listeners that are listening. We have people that listen 6 to 9 a.m. every single day, and that's amazing. I don't know.
Are they truck drivers?
I think they're a lot of it is just people at home, right?
Okay.
And they just listening on their smart speaker, and it's as they get ready all morning, and then they just have us on in the background. Doesn't mean they're listening to every single word we're saying, but they end up knowing a lot about us. And I think it would be silly to say that we don't have at least some influence on those people. And hopefully it's a positive influence. Hopefully that's what we're contributing to the world.
Huh. I had a question about Ottawa that I forgot to ask you a little bit earlier. So I was reading an article the other day, and it said that there was someone trying to revive the downtown core in Ottawa. And one of the main reasons that they want to do this, or one of the issues that the city is having, is, there's a lot of remote work. There's a lot of federally employed people that in Ottawa, and if you're working from home on a Friday afternoon, you're not downtown, and so a lot of the restaurants are suffering. Byward Market in particular, someone was telling me, like, I saw a clip from back in the 90s in the Byward Market. It was like hustling and bustling. And it's like
so
you go
your nights are still good at the Byward Market. Your like weekend nights are still going to be busy, right? The clubs are popping, and it's good. But during the week, it's not what it was. So there's multiple problems here. The first one being, yes, for sure, work from home for government workers. There's a lot of empty buildings right now, and they're trying to convert a lot of those to condos. Yeah, because there's also a housing crisis in Ottawa, as there is in many
across
other cities,
Canada,
right? Exactly, around the world. It seems to be
but Canadians in particular, it's like the Canadian real estate market. It's a mess.
Insanely expensive.
It's a mess.
Exactly, and so they need many, many, many more units, including a lot of affordable housing units. And so they're trying to convert a lot of buildings, but converting an office building to housing is crazy expensive. Because
I heard some guy, I was listening to a real estate guy, and it's called the Looney Hour. I'll plug in the Looney Hour. Great podcast. It's a real estate broker out of it's 3 of them, but he's out of Vancouver. He said in many cases, because of the HVAC in commercial buildings, he said in many cases, many instances, it's actually cheaper to just tear it down and rebuild it.
That's what I've heard as well. And also just look at this building that we're in right now. Yeah. You need to have windows in a unit, right? Yes. You're gonna have a lot of very long, skinny units, just the way that
to get to the light.
Right, exactly. The way that a commercial building is constructed, it doesn't lend itself well. You're not gonna have balconies. You're not gonna have. It's not a very appealing building. So that's one issue that they're having. Although they have already changed some of these buildings, they're having an issue doing that. The second issue is there's also a homeless crisis right now and a drug crisis, right? Yeah. And so there's a lot of drugs and homeless people, particularly in the Byward Market.
Yeah, I noticed
all of their shelters, all of our shelters are in the Byward Market. And recently they tried to move them, but what neighborhood is going to accept a homeless shelter?
No
right?
one.
Like, do you want suddenly it to be built in your next to you, right?
No.
Of course.
I'm gonna be honest.
Of course, right? Very few people would say they
Especially
would.
Have kids.
It's tough. It's tough, right? And so that's really, they're all in the Byward Market. All the major ones. There's 2 big ones, and then
do you think it's revivable?
I mean, I hope so. So there's a few different things that they're doing. One of the big ones for sure is building next to downtown as well. So they're adding a ton of condos downtown, which is great, which is awesome. I know where I live, a few blocks from Parliament, and there's condos going up all over the place. Hopefully a grocery store in that area. And there's a lot of people already in that area. It's getting new people in or building condos to add more people to the area. Another thing they're doing is just west of downtown, west of Parliament, is it's called Le Breton Flats. And right now, it's owned by the NCC.
What's the NCC?
It's the National something. So it's a
Thanks, Brady.
Yeah, real helpful there. So it's the government. It's sort of a part of the government, but not really. They operate independently. They control a lot of different land in Ottawa, including Le Breton Flats, including the canal. They have different. They're not there to make money. They're there to preserve the land in the national capital region, and to make decisions that benefit people differently than the dollar or differently than general development. And that's why you don't see any construction on the canal. It's just a path, which personally drives me nuts. I think, how do you not have downtown Ottawa where the canal goes in, right next to TD Center there, or TD Place, I get them confused. How do you not have like 9 or 10 bars and restaurants on the canal? It's beautiful there in the summer. How do you not have that? Like that drives me, like imagine like a little old port, but it drives me crazy.
It would be amazing for the city.
Of course it would. It would create a whole new district, and they don't have that. Anyway, so there's this land west of Parliament called Le Breton Flats. It's essentially nothing right now. The LRT, which is like our REM, our rail system, it's brand new. It's had a bunch of trouble. Anyway, it goes through there, and they designed it to have the capacity for Senators games. So ideally, this whole area is going to be where the new arena is. Tons of new condos, a lot of restaurants and bars. It'll be. Are you familiar with Lansdowne?
Yes.
It'll be the Lansdowne of downtown, basically.
Nice.
Which would be cool.
What's going on with the Sens in terms of building a new hockey arena?
Yeah, so that's so there's a new ownership came in, Michael Landlauer, and that's what they're trying to figure out right now. So that's the main site is Le Breton Flats, but the problem with that is he has to now negotiate with the NCC, who sucks. They're so hard to talk to. Again, because they have a different sort of mission than others. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or the mayor really wants them to work with the city and do it on city land. So there's a couple properties that are maybe okay.
Because I feel like whenever, at least in my personal experience, whenever I speak to someone from Ottawa about the hockey team, I go like, what do you think about having, as opposed to having an arena in Canada, which is like, especially if you're in Gloucester, there's traffic. You can't even have a couple beers. It's far. It's far to get
ridiculously far.
And if it was downtown, everyone goes, yes, that would be fantastic.
Yep.
I have yet to run into someone who goes, no, that's a bad idea. Well, I haven't heard one person from Ottawa say that's a bad idea.
I know a few people, and it's because it's in their backyard, right? And they're so happy they live in Canada, and it's like, well, it's a 2-minute drive from me. And so I get it. Yeah, you're losing like this giant arena that has all the good concerts and everything else.
Yes.
That's in your backyard.
But for the city
it has to be.
Yes.
Because it's not just Ottawa. You're also opening yourself up to Gatineau. Right now, Gatineau is just over the bridge. It's 2 seconds away. I could see it from my condo, right? They don't feel like the Senators are their team. But if you put the arena, suddenly now it's downtown.
That'll change real quick.
It's literally a 5-minute walk from Gatineau. Suddenly this is their team. That's going to add a lot of people in. You also have, from Orleans, which is the far side. So you have Orleans on one side, Canada on the other, downtown in the middle.
Orleans is just east of Gloucester.
Yeah,
correct?
Exactly. Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
Orléans.
Exactly. It's very French in Orleans.
It is, yeah.
But Orleans, to get to Orleans to Canada, it's like a 45-minute drive.
Yeah, it's far.
Which is insane. It's
so
insane.
Anyone from Orleans or even Gloucester to get
45 minutes without traffic, by the way.
Yeah. So, but like to go from Gloucester with traffic to Canada.
Yeah.
And if there's a game, let's say it's a playoff game, there will be traffic.
Sure.
You're looking at over an hour.
Oh,
right?
yeah. And if you're going to a game, you're probably going to go leave at 5:30, right? You're leaving like peak rush hour. Way too far.
And for the arena itself too, because like if you don't have to drive, well, guess what? People are going to drink more beer. That's a fact.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Well, so it's a thing in Ottawa where there's a bar on the 100 level. People just go and they just have drinks after the game because the parking lot as well. Yeah. You're in the middle of nowhere. It's not a downtown core like Montreal where you can park a few blocks away and you can get out of downtown.
Yes.
You're in one giant parking lot. And they've gotten better over the years of traffic control and getting people out of there, but you're still stuck in traffic for 15, 20 minutes coming out of the parking lot, which is brutal.
Yeah.
It's brutal. As someone who works wakes up at 4:30 in the morning every day, I can't stay to the end of a hockey game or the end of a concert, let's say. I can't stay till 11 o'clock, sit in traffic for 20 minutes, drive home for 25 minutes. I get home at midnight after a concert, and I live downtown. It makes no sense.
Yeah.
I can't go to a concert on a Tuesday and stay till the end. I have to leave at 10:30.
Now here's the next question. There's all coulda, shoulda, woulda, or we should be building this. Do you think it will get built?
I think the NCC is a big hurdle here, but ultimately it has to be downtown. It can't be anywhere else.
Is your feeling that the mayor is on the side of the NHL in the sense that they want to get a new arena? Because the NHL wants it too.
For sure.
They're going to make more money.
Everybody wants it.
Yes.
Everybody needs it.
So it's basically just the NCC that are there.
So the reason it was originally built in Canada is because not even before Melnyk, the original owners of the team, they owned all that land. And if you look around that arena, it's all car dealerships.
Yeah.
And so they owned all of that and brought that in, and they thought
there's also an expansion team. Like maybe it'll work, maybe it won't.
Exactly. What's cheap? What's the most profitable? And then Melnyk ended up buying it, and he was a little didn't like spending money. All right, he didn't like spending money. And
there is some. So just a little detour here. I was won't say his name. He's not working with the Sens anymore, but he was working with the Sens, and so he was selling tickets for the Sens. And he goes, a lot of locals he would call, basically, hey, do you want to buy season tickets? We have boxes. We have this. We have that. He would call up people in Ottawa.
Yeah.
And a lot of people would say to him, not a lot, but enough people would say to him, as long as Melnyk is the owner of this team, I am not buying any tickets. 100%. I hate this guy.
And so Andlauer came in this year. Optimism was at a record high. People were so excited for the team. And now they're just bombing. They're having a terrible season, which is such a bummer. You feel for the guy. But people love him and are very excited at what he brings. He's willing to invest money. It's a silly
is
small
he Canadian?
thing. Yeah, he's Canadian. I think he's a Toronto guy.
Okay.
He owns the Hamilton Bulldogs as well. Okay. He owned 10% of the Habs. So funny enough, he bought the Sens for just under $1 million. I think it was 950. Sorry,
$1 billion. Yeah. Whoa, shit. Let me go take out a loan today.
Yeah, exactly. Let's get in.
You want to go buy the Sens?
Relocate them to like Kirkland Arena. Bring them back. No, so he bought them for, I think it was like $950 million or something like that. And then he sold his 10% in the Habs, and that was $250 million. So just by selling his 10% stake in the Habs, he already covered a giant chunk of his investment in the Sens. Keep in mind, there's other investors. He didn't front the whole 950.
Yes,
so, he did very well on his investment into the Habs.
That's one thing that people don't understand. Like here in Montreal, when you ask who's the owner of the Montreal Canadiens, they're going to go the Molson family.
Sure.
Yeah. Yes, they have a majority stake in the Montreal Canadiens, but there are several other major investors in the team.
Totally.
And every NHL hockey.
Absolutely.
Every sports franchise is like that, by the way.
I think Seattle Kraken, they have, I think it's, I might be wrong, it's like 9 or 12 equal investors, right?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, if I'm like investor number 8 and I'm walking in this arena and I know I own just as much of the team as anybody else, but no one knows who I am. And I'm just waiting in line for a hot dog. You know what I mean? Like no staff even knows who I am. That sucks. You're like 150 million into this and no one knows who you are.
Yeah, it's true.
It's weird.
There's like this one guy that's one of the podcasters I follow, Patrick Bet-David, and he just bought into the, do you know PBD podcast?
No.
Anyways, very interesting. He's got a pretty good, he's building a media company. He actually used to be an insurance guy. He's trying to build a media company.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
He's got 6 million subs on YouTube.
Wow, that's fantastic.
It's good. And he bought into the Yankees. And so they're asking him, like, how much did you buy into the Yankees? I was thinking, like, I don't know, 2, 3, 5, 10%.
Yeah,
so he's like just shy of 1%.
Wow.
But the team's worth, I think, $9 billion.
But it's an investment, right?
It's a huge investment. And what he said, though, the next thing he said, he goes, people generally, the shareholders of a franchise like the Yankees, he goes, they do not sell.
Right.
So he's like, the fact I got in, I'm convinced that the only reason he got in is because he has a platform, he has an audience, and he can promote the game of baseball. I think that's probably, if I was an investor in the Yankees, that's what I would do.
Absolutely. Well, they did something similar with Marshawn Lynch in Seattle, right?
Yes.
They brought him on, I would assume, for a discounted rate and gave him a certain cut of the team so that he could be the advocate for the team in the community. And he's a hero there, right? He's a legend and helps grow the game.
That's what happened with, fun fact, that's what happened with Mario Lemieux. So Mario Lemieux.
Sure, yeah.
They couldn't afford to pay him what he was supposed to get paid. And they said, all right, we'll give you some shares in the hockey team.
And they offered Gretzky something similar with the Ducks, and he turned them down. Can you imagine?
I don't know if the Ducks maybe.
I'm sure they're still. I don't know if they're $1 billion franchise, but they're still worth quite a.
But the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Oh yeah.
I think, like, honestly,
he sold his stake recently, Mario Lemieux, and he made, I think it was like $400 million.
I'm sure
it was something insane.
Sure.
But what an incredible, I mean.
That'd be nice.
It wouldn't. I'll
nice.
take.
I'd like that.
10% of that. I'll take 1% of that.
Yeah, I'd like that.
Yeah.
I was playing golf at in Tampa. This was a couple of years ago. I remember getting to the golf course with one of my buddies.
Yeah.
And so we get there and he goes, Mario Lemieux's here today. I didn't
Wow.
see him. But just the fact that
Yeah.
I knew he was on the golf course at the same time as us.
Incredible, right?
I was like, oh, this is sick.
Okay,
I've never seen him.
Want to hear a great story? So
I want to hear a great story.
So we're pretty fortunate on the radio to meet a lot of really amazing people.
Yeah.
And we on the show, and I actually mentioned it to you earlier, one of the girls on my show, Jenny, she's a huge golf fan. Her husband is a golf pro, which for those who are not in the golf community doesn't mean he plays on the tour or anything. It means he's the head pro. He trains people at a really, really great golf course in
Head
Ottawa.
professional.
Head professional, exactly, yeah. And so there's this amazing couple that listen to our show, and he's a great lawyer. She's a judge, a federal judge, the sweetest people in the world. And we didn't know them, but one day he sends an email to Jenny saying, this is peak COVID, saying, hey, look, I have a condo in Mexico and live. The PGA Tour is actually coming here to play, but it's during COVID, so the only people that can go watch are people that own on the property. I feel like I'm wasting this opportunity. I'm not a golfer. I don't know any golfers. This is going to sound weird, but would you like to come down with your family and come watch the PGA Tour at our condo on this gorgeous resort? And she was like, this is like, okay, this is interesting. This is strange. She Googles him. We all are like looking into him. He's like, this seems like a very nice gentleman, you know? She ends up saying yes. She goes, has a great time. They invite me the next time and we go. And it's this gorgeous resort hanging out with this sweet couple that just listen to the show every day. And they wanted to give back. And they're like, hey, like we have a empty, just come and enjoy yourselves. And so since then I've been twice, and they have a golf course there that is, the first time I went, I played the course. It's a live course. Live has played there. PGA Tour has played there. The first time I went there, the week before, Michael Jordan and Tony Romo were playing on the course. Yeah. And
Imagine
Britney
the gambling.
Spears was there 2 weeks
Imagine the
before.
betting going on with that.
Oh, my God. Can you imagine? Yeah, I was checking
and
in
they're
bushes.
both really good golfers.
I hear Michael Jordan's an incredible. I was checking in the bushes to see if they dropped any hundreds. You know what I mean?
I bet more than that.
Oh,
Tony Romo's an amazing golfer.
Is he?
Tony Romo won the in Lake Tahoe. I forget the name of the term, but in
it's
Lake,
like a celebrity pro-am or something, right?
Yes, but he's good. He's better than Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan is like, do you play golf?
Yeah.
What's your handicap?
Oh, terrible. I'm a terrible golfer. I've been golfing my entire life, and I never get better.
Can you break 100?
Yeah, but
Okay.
like if I hit, if I shoot 95, I'm like, that was a great day.
Okay.
Yeah. Are you a good golfer?
I play golf often.
Okay.
enough,
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. I play golf maybe 10 times a year, and every time I'm drunk. So it's, I'm a social golfer. Yeah.
What's your lowest score ever?
92.
92?
91? 92.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a good score.
Yeah. Are you close to scratch?
Yeah.
Okay. Attaboy.
I'm a 4 handicap.
Where do you golf?
Beaconsfield.
Okay, great. Yeah, I got a lot of friends
golf
that
course.
golf Beaconsfield. Yeah.
Your buddies with Sean Sproul, right?
Best buddies. Yeah.
That's Beaconsfield. Honestly, that's one of the main reasons why I just realized how dark it got outside.
Yeah. Welcome to January.
Holy
man.
shit!
Yeah.
Are the days getting longer now or shorter?
Longer.
Okay, we're going on a tangent now. Okay, so here, what's something that you want to talk about? Because you came here with some more. It
was all radio stuff. Do you want to talk? We can talk more radio.
I'd love to talk about like radio a little bit more. So
what else? What else would you like to talk about radio?
I have a question that I haven't asked you yet.
Sure.
So it's, what is your main goal, like individually?
Yeah.
And like, not to talk ill of 89.9. It's a great radio station. Stuff, but for your own personal aspirations, do you want to, become like a like a what's his name, Rich Melnick or Mitch
Melnick? Yeah.
Would you say he's the biggest? Who's the biggest radio personality in Canada today?
Oh, in Canada, can't see. Montreal is different. They always call Montreal an island for in the radio world because, first of all, it is an island physically, but also it's people within Montreal stay within Montreal.
Yes.
And so the biggest person in Montreal is huge here, but not as big anywhere else. But vice versa. There's people in Toronto that no one in Montreal knows about, right? So biggest in Canada would be tough. I mean, everybody knows like a Rick Campanelli from his time at Much Music. I don't even think he's on air anymore doing radio.
Oh my God,
Marilyn Dennis is huge in Toronto. But the thing with radio is that you don't have like a lot of people aren't huge in multiple markets. We are syndicated. We're in a few markets, but we're in smaller markets in addition to Ottawa. Roz and Mocha are a show out of Toronto. They're in a bunch of different markets, so they're quite large in the radio space. But I wouldn't. Are there any national stars? I wouldn't really say that there are right now necessarily. Marilyn Dennis is quite big though, and especially in Toronto. And as far as Montreal goes, I mean, Tony DeMonte was huge. He recently retired a couple years ago. I don't know who the number one person would be. Maybe Aaron Rand over on CJ80. He's huge.
Aaron Rand. Do you know Andrew Carter?
Yeah, Andrew Carter as well.
Andrew Carter, yeah.
I mean, they're both fantastic, right?
Yeah, great radio voice. Andrew
Oh
Carter.
man, yeah. They're both really cool apparently as well. I haven't met them. I've chatted with Andrew Carter by email before, but apparently
Andrew's
cool.
he's a member at our golf course.
Right, of course.
His son used to work at our company.
Oh,
as
cool.
Well, so yeah,
cool. And
great golf. He's a great golfer.
I bet.
Kevin Carter. Oof,
yeah. Oh yeah, real. Okay, great.
Very good golfer.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, I've heard nothing but great things about them. In terms of career aspirations, I've always wanted to be a program director, which is the person that runs the radio station. I've always it runs the at least the on air, the creative side of the radio station, not sales. That's a different person. I've always loved business, and that's why I'm so fascinated when I listen to your podcast. And I think you do a great job of kind of providing insight into different industries. And
thank you.
I think that's super entertaining. I love that stuff. So I would love to be more involved in that side of things. That said, man, it would be really tough to leave what I got going. I'm especially in the radio world to work with the people I work with and to have a consistent number one show and to have honestly just a steady job, a job where I don't have to worry about getting shit canned is huge. And
would you ever though, like, have you ever thought about kind of just having like I don't know, I always think about having just a badass podcast.
Yeah, but to build that it's
crazy.
It's tough.
It's
and again, to go back, remember all those positions I named before within a radio station?
Yes.
That was probably 2/3 of them. There's more. There's so many. Radio is such a massively. We're so good, like I said, at monetizing audio that to recreate that machine on my own seems daunting, to say the least. And that's not to say that people can't do it. It's just it's a lot of work, and there's no guarantee. It's entrepreneurship, right? But it's jumping into something that I feel like, not to say that I've quote unquote made it. I feel like that's kind of douchey, but I feel like I've gotten to the point where I wanted to get to. Not that I'm satisfied with where I am at all, but I've gotten to a really, really fortunate point in the industry where I can kind of breathe and be grateful for where I'm at. And,
live in the present.
Most importantly, to continue to love what I'm doing. And I have total control, creative control over what I do. No one tells me sort of different direction. You know what I mean? Like, obviously it's a team environment, but like I can kind of do whatever I want. I'm in a really, really good place, and that's the company that I'm working with. They believe in me, so it would be very difficult to leave where I'm at.
It would have to be a really, really, really good proposition.
Role. Exactly.
Like,
the perfect role where I can see myself growing and I can see the right
security,
thing.
growth,
absolutely. But to drop it all for me now and launch a podcast, for example, it wouldn't make sense.
Okay, makes sense. What's your opinion on, like, for example, like a Caller Daddy?
Yeah.
So not on the actual content that she releases.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. I think. Alex? What's her last? It doesn't really matter.
Cooper.
Alex Cooper. I got a lot of respect for the woman. I don't like the content, to be honest. Like, it's more catered to women, I think.
Yep.
But she struck a chord. She's doing something right. And
did
the fact
she ever? Yeah.
What was the contract she signed with Spotify? $20 million a year,
something like that. Yeah, absolutely incredible. And she grew that from. She had the Barstool machine behind her, obviously helping promote her.
But at the beginning, do you know how much she was making at Barstool when she first started?
Yeah, I followed that whole thing.
It was like $70,000.
Yeah, I see both sides. Right, she blew up and her contract was crap, but Barstool was willing to work with her.
Yeah.
But man, she deserves to be getting paid if she's pulling in those numbers. She's right there with Rogan, right? She's top 3 consistently, or top 2 even.
Yes.
I think it's her, Smartless, and Rogan are like the top 3.
Yes.
Man, good on her. She's found I don't even want to call it a niche, but a market.
What is Barstool? Like, I know Barstool, but there's all these companies now popping up, and I know Alex Cooper is trying to do the same thing herself. So she's trying to hire
a network, right?
Yeah, it's like creators underneath of the Alex Cooper banner, and basically people that have talent. And the first person that comes to mind. So, you listen to Chiclet. Chiclets is underneath
under the Barstool
umbrella of Barstool. I think they're capped out because it's hockey.
Sure,
but like, what Are they a talent agency? They're almost like a quasi hybrid between.
Yeah, what they are is a network, and essentially what it allows creators to do is to pool resources. So now you have a marketing machine behind you. You have a series of video editors that can work with you. You have a series of similar to you opening a separate entity in Ottawa, or not entity, but another branch or whatever division. Yeah, in Ottawa, you have the resources here to help that office in Ottawa succeed. It's the same sort of thing where essentially they're buying lottery tickets hoping to hit a jackpot. They're buying lottery tickets where they kind of know the numbers. You know what I mean? They might know 3 of the 5 numbers, and they're trying to get lucky. They're picking good talent, and they're hoping they succeed. But they have those resources to sort of prop up people that they believe are talented, and I think they do a really good job of it. I think if you're a young creator and you can get in on something like that, it's like you're starting on first base. You're starting with something, which is fantastic, which is great.
I think that's a good place to leave it at. I don't really have it. Do you have any final words you'd like to say?
No, man. I guess believe in radio. I think digital media is very much a shiny new thing that is awesome and is a great tool for so many people. But traditional media obviously has influence and power still. And
I agree. I think honestly, my opinion on this, on digital media, digital advertising, or traditional advertising, whether it's like billboard or radio, I think both are here to stay. And I think they both have their place. And a perfect example is books. Why do there's a lot of people when the Kindle came out.
Yep.
There's still a lot of people that books are still around, and everything's digitized. Yep. So I think it's just something that is going to stay here. I think they both have their place. I think there's enough of the pie that everyone can eat.
Totally.
But I don't see traditional media going anywhere.
Yeah. I hope not.
It might shrink a bit, which
course.
is fine. And the digital,
yeah.
I don't think we're going to get to a point where everything's just 100% digitized through Facebook and Google. I think these networks are going to stay around. That's my opinion.
I think so too, but I think it's also important that we adapt and recognize that the world is changing, and we have to change with it and offer different products and services, which I think and I hope Stingray is doing. But thanks for having me on here, man. I think you're doing a really fun thing here, and I look forward to hearing different
my pleasure,
future
Brady.
episodes. Thanks, man.
My pleasure, man. Thank you for coming on. This
Cheers,
is the Freemium Podcast. This is Curtis Killen, Brady Jones. Thanks so much. We're out.